Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts, Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 17th of January 2025. Now my first hits and losses video of the day was very short, so I'm going to please all my viewers by announcing that my Geopolitics video might be a little bit longer. It's quite a lot to say today. But anyway, military aid. We're going to start with NATO and Rob Bauer, who is an admiral, a NATO admiral, saying that Allied support for Ukraine won't suddenly change with Trump's inauguration. NATO has taken over, and this is the interesting bit for me because we've been talking about this, that NATO was wanting to take the reins away from the US in terms of the kind of Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the kind of Ramstein organization, where the US was heading that and organizing, facilitating all the aid coming to Ukraine, all the military aid coming to Ukraine. NATO has been saying for some time, look, we'll take the reins there because we're not too sure that you're going to be up for that after the Trump inauguration and when Trump gets to be president. And America was a bit reluctant to agree to that. Well, it looks like that has happened to some degree. NATO has taken over some responsibilities in coordinating aid for Ukraine from the US with Washington's consent, ensuring a stable support mechanism going forward, NATO Military Committee Chief Admiral Rob Bauer, has said on January the 16th. So that's, I think, good news for the stability of support for Ukraine. Now, Hobbit has met Troll. The Italian defense minister, is it Crosetto? Yeah, Crosetto has met Zelensky in Kiev. Now is a moment, perhaps the most critical moment in the past 3 years, to increase support. Italian defense minister Guido Crosetto has told the Ukrainian president. Now, Italy is a nation that has an awful lot more they could do. I know that Daniela from Tochny was going to come on and talk about this, and Ireland as well. We never got round to it. The simple fact that as one of the big four in Europe, Italy has been somewhat strong on rhetoric. So Giorgia Meloni has been very strong in her opposition to Russia. But it was actually the previous government and president prior to that new government that came in, that you can argue far-right coalition, or certainly right-wing coalition, of Giorgia Meloni's brothers of Italy, Forza Italia and La Liga, so Matteo Salvini's La Liga. Matteo Salvini is pro-Russian. Forza was Silvio Berlusconi. Before he died, that was his party, and he was like a close friend of Putin. And people were thinking Giorgia Meloni was going to go the same way, because actually her party sits just, pretty much in the same place on the political spectrum. But she's interestingly been very different and been very pro-Ukraine, really strongly pro-Ukraine. However, most of the aid that Italy gave was aid, I believe, that was what Italy initially gave under, was it Draghi? And there has been this lack of material support for Ukraine that would match that kind of rhetoric. So it's good to see Crosetto over there and saying what needs to be said. What we'd like to see is the material to match that rhetoric. Italy's upcoming military aid package is to include modern weaponry, according to Rustem Umerov, the defense minister for Ukraine. Ukraine will receive a military aid package from Italy after meeting with Crosetto, who is definitely a big fella, because Rustem Umerov is, I think, fairly sizable. Crosetto is a giant there. Okay. Not relevant. Right, Tim White, more aid from Ukraine's partners. So Poland says it will send tanks and Piran launchers and ammunition. I think Piran, they are the ATGMs, or are they manpads? Piran launcher. These are the Polish. They've been using these in, it's a manpad, so it's a man-portable air defense. So that is a Polish manpad. That'll be useful for them, ATGMs and manpads obviously in great need. It's good to see a few more videos of or evidence of javelins being used. I was looking at Kriegsforscher, this guy that's up in the Kursk region, that was just detailing all the stuff that his unit had destroyed. And he was like, this was taken out by javelins. It's taken out, it's good to see them still being used and still in stock in Ukraine. Netherlands Foreign Minister Caspar Veldkamp had, during his own visit to Kiev, pledged 27 million euros for Ukraine. 20 million is for the energy sector and 7 million for NATO's assistance package. And indeed, this is talked about here in the Euromonitor Press. So the aid package, combined with additional NATO support, reflects the Dutch government's broader commitment to maintaining robust Western assistance for Ukraine as the conflict approaches its third year. So the Netherlands have been strong supporters of Ukraine as well, and they are going through their own political, I guess, upheaval, change from Mark Rutte, who's now Secretary General of NATO, and they have a coalition including PVV on the right, and yet they're still maintaining that support for Ukraine. So that is really good, because PVV and Geert Wilders is kind of a bit like Kikel in Austria. They're really shaking things up. You've got Orban in Hungary. You've got the AfD on the march in Germany. You've got Rassemblement National in France doing well. It is, and obviously Robert Fico in Slovakia, or as someone pointed out, Fico, which is an Italian word that properly describes who Robert Fico really is. Anyway, so these are troubling times in Europe, and it's good to see Europe still coming up with the goods at the moment. Czech initiative delivers 80% of the promised ammunition to Ukraine. The Czech Ammunition Procurement Initiative has delivered 520,000 155mm shells to Ukraine by the end of 2024, meeting 80% of its targets. It wasn't all 155mm shells, so there was more stuff on top of that, I would have thought. That's Ukraine's Foreign Minister Sybiha saying that, so that's good news there. UK is to play a full part in peacekeeping efforts in Ukraine, says Starmer. So I've heard various things about what Starmer said concerning peacekeeping efforts, whether he was a little bit cautious on that, and other claims that actually, they're going to play a full part. So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he had discussed the possibility of deploying peacekeeping troops to Ukraine with Zelensky during their meeting in Kyiv. So we'll see how that turns out. And of course, we heard that the UK was going to be providing, and I was unsure because I heard on the one hand that it was going to be providing, UK is going to be providing barrels, 150 barrels, and then other people reporting 150 artillery barrels or pieces, and I still don't know, because then we hear a UK announcement that a new £61 million contract with BAE Systems to produce artillery gun barrels for Ukraine. The deal will kickstart UK gun barrel production for the first time in 20 years in Sheffield Forgemasters. And just in case you want to know, it's off the M1 in Sheffield in Yorkshire. I've reported on this new project at that facility in Sheffield, which is going to be using hopefully British steel as well. And it's part of the, should be part of an industrial strategy that takes into account security as well. So, we want to produce steel for industrial reasons and for jobs and, economic stimulus, but if it's not going to be price competitive, what about letting the free market take over? And the free marketeer would say, well, if it's not competitive, then close it down and we'll buy our steel in from wherever else. And that's the free market working, right? We don't want government involvement. However, that's not how to run a country when you have to consider what your security needs are and strategic planning for your economy. So, and that needs to take into account, well, if we are having to import all our steel from China and China ends up being our enemy, then we need to be thinking a little bit more strategically than that. So how about, yes, it might not be price competitive, but if we are pumping in some investment into manufacturing in the UK, maybe we can make it competitive in the long run. And we certainly need to produce our own stuff in order that we can secure those resources going forward to make our own weapons in case we're at a time of needing that and we're at war. So there's a lot more to running a country than just letting the free market run wild. Anyway, there is that. So it still hasn't really answered my question as to whether the announcement of 150 barrels was barrels or artillery pieces. I mean, I say the announcement. I don't know which one it was. So there are varying source claims. Okay, now we're going to Peter Clifford saying that France has sent the first 1,000-ton delivery of rails to Ukraine to modernize its railway and connectivity to the EU network, part of 19,000 tons to come. So this is really good news. Just to let you know, in case you don't know, if you want to go to Ukraine, you can't fly to Ukraine. So you have to get the train in. And you can't get a train straight from Europe into, say, Kyiv or Lviv. You have to change because the gauge in Ukraine is the Soviet gauge, which is different from the European gauge. So you have to get off a train, say, in Poland's Chelm, and you get on a different train, and then that will run from Chelm in Poland just over the border through to, for example, Kyiv. Right, but what they have done is create some trains where the carriages, and so there are some hoppers that can change gauge, and I think you just have to change your locomotive. Then you don't have to get. So what you're having to do is really problematic, because say you've got a whole train full of grain. What do you do with that? So you have to get all of that grain out of these hoppers and into new hoppers on a different gauge track, and then change the train, and that's incredibly expensive and time consuming. You want that train to just go straight through. Thank you very much. So this is a big issue for Ukraine. So they have been creating hoppers that can change gauge, and I presume locomotives that can also change gauge as well. But of course, that's more of a short-term fix rather than that. Ideally, you would want Ukraine to operate on the same gauge as Europe if they are going to be part of Europe. So France has begun transporting rails and rail equipment to Ukraine. France is helping Ukraine abandon Soviet railroad standards and is actively participating in the expansion of the network and bringing it up to European standards. Really good news there. Okay, Ukrainian border guards have received a 155mm wheeled self-propelled howitzer, the DITA, to their arsenal. These have been provided by the Netherlands, is it? But not produced in the Netherlands. DITA Howitzer. I just might as well do my is this a Dana? Right, okay. Right. So yes, it is a self-propelled howitzer, been known as and I'm not going to try and pronounce that, self-propelled howitzer model 77, blah blah blah. Yeah, Czechoslovakia, now Slovakia. So it's not the Susanna, but it is a one that's been around for some time by the looks of it. Yeah, 1981 to present. But one would presume this is a much newer model. The DITA, I presume, is a variant. Dana, Modern. Yeah, Susanna and the Susanna 2. That's what they're getting from Slovakia. And the DITA here is one that Ukraine and Azerbaijan have. Yeah, so I don't know what the big difference between that and maybe the Susanna 2. But their variants of the same gun, but they have a DITA there, so that's good news, and they should be receiving more. I'm pretty sure the Netherlands are funding some of those. Okay, Ukraine has produced over 30,000 bomber drones in 2024, says a minister. Now, I did a little bit of a deep dive into these larger drones, these bomber drones, often hexacopters. I don't know whether this is going to include the smaller ones, like just your regular quadcopters that can drop bombs as well. But certainly the Baba Yaga drones are something that the Russians fear, and the Ukrainians have been using to great effect. And there has been an asymmetry between the two sides there. And Ukraine needs to really lean heavily into this, and they have been. Andrew Perpetua and that article in Forbes by David Hambling saying that the successes of these bomber drones have been undercounted. In the visually confirmed loss lists, goodness me. And they are a very effective part of Ukraine's arsenal. So the bomber drones were created during Russia's full-scale invasion and operate mainly at night. They can remotely disperse mines or transport ammunition, food, and medicine to Ukrainian positions. So this might well be drawing from that Hambling article in Forbes. If we click on the Kyiv Independent, I'm sure it will reference that article. You would have thought maybe it doesn't. Yeah, it's a very short piece here, so I'm sure some of these links will be to the Forbes article, but we shall see. Anyway, that was an interesting article yesterday, and it just goes to show how important these drones really are. 30,000 of them being produced. If that is the larger, Baba Yaga variety, and that's an incredible number of drones. And these drones also that you would assume they're certainly not kamikaze drones, so they're not one-way drones. You're going to reuse these as much as possible until they get shot down or until they fail and break and whatnot. So 30,000 of these drones is going to be super useful for the Ukrainians. Now here's another Ukrainian drone, an anti-Shahid Interceptor. Have I seen anything like this before? I've seen so much footage and pictures and reported on so much stuff. I do struggle sometimes, but I wonder whether it's part of the success rate of taking out these Shahid drones. Although this morning there was 7 out of 50 that did get through, which is actually quite a low, comparatively low interception rate. But we have seen 100% of waves of 100 plus drones be taken out recently, and you're wondering what Ukraine is using. They're using a whole wide range of things and a whole wide range of ways of detecting and acquiring these targets too. But this could be an element of what they're using, these newfangled drone interceptor drones themselves that go up and maybe, I don't know if these acquire the targets and home in on them and take them out. But anyway, that is maybe something we'll see more of. And then Samuel Bender, on this subject of drones, says a Ukrainian publication, Army Inform, published an interview with the commander of the drone engineer platoon. He noted the need to switch to digital video communication, which will provide a higher quality picture, but it's also more difficult to intercept and less susceptible to the influence of electronic warfare. He also spoke about the introduction of guidance technologies using artificial intelligence in Ukraine, in the armed forces there. This increases the cost of the drone by a relatively significant amount, in fact about twice as much, but increases the likelihood of hitting enemy equipment. So it's that trade-off. It's like, here's a drone, it's twice as expensive as the other one, but hey, if it's twice as likely to hit it, then you get your money back type thing. Or I don't know what the different ratios are, but you're going to be playing around with these cost benefit analyses. He also spoke about the introduction of cruise control systems which allow the drone to autonomously fly to a given square by coordinates, overcoming electronic warfare. Which the way I'd understand that is that if you've got a drone going from A to B, and that A and that B are, say, 15 kilometers away, and it may only be that between kilometers 7 and 10 you've got electronic warfare interference that will send a drone down because you're trying to control it and send that signal from yourself at A to the drone flying through kilometers 7 to 10. But actually, once it gets past kilometer 10, from 10 to 15, where it's finding its target, there's no electronic interference there. It just so happens that it's here. Well, if you can set your drone to autonomously go from A to the square of B, might be a square kilometer, and once it's there, you pick up the control of it again, and then you hit the target using manual control, then that gets over the electronic interference that just so happens to be at kilometers 7 to 10. So that's how I'd understand that. So if you can just do the bog standard flying bit autonomously and then take it over at the end, then now there's going to be many instances for sure, where the electronic warfare is around the target. Then you've got another problem. But that certainly gets over some of the issues that you're going to be facing with regard to electronic warfare interference. Anyway, according to this engineer, these and other innovations could appear en masse in the Ukrainian armed forces in just 5 to 6 months. I mean, there have been lots of claims about artificial intelligence and drones for a long time now. It's been a long time coming, but I say a long time coming, but actually it's been incredibly quick how both sides have brought in new drone capabilities over the course of this war. Okay, that's enough from me. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.